busy week last week, and a lot of activity, a lot of things going on in the NHRC world and in the housing counseling world, and we'll do our best to bring you up to date on a lot of it. So welcome everybody to the call. Just a quick rundown of what we're going to do on the call. We're going to start out with a legislative update and what's happening, especially in the housing counseling funding world. And then we're going to have a presentation from Homeownership Partner Network, Housing Partnership Network on Framework, and that's the online counseling and education program that HPN and Minnesota Housing Ownership Center put together. And then we're going to spend most of the call talking about our meetings in the that we did with the White House, with HUD, with the Secretary of HUD, and with the CFPB and people on the Hill. So we have a good group of people representing the group that did all these meetings. So all should be should all be very good. So and then we're also going to do a quick update on what's happening with the Leaders in Housing Counseling meeting that we're having in December in DC, and of course we always want to encourage you to join NHRC. So let's dive in and start with the legislative updates. So Matthew, what's happening with housing counseling funding?
All right, so not a lot to update, but what you see on the screen is kind of the information that we want to share. So yesterday the House passed a continuing resolution, so that's going to keep federal funding for HUD Housing Counseling Assistance and for NFMC at their current funding levels through December 11th. So that's $45 million for, well, prorated obviously, $45 million for HUD Housing Counseling Assistance and $67.5 million for NFMC. And we've kind of made the point before that it's actually a continuing resolution for as long as it's there is not the worst thing that's happened to us since the cuts. If they passed a budget, the cuts would have been greater than would have brought NFMC well below where it is now. So it's not a bad thing. So now the Senate has it on their calendar for actually right now. They're going to take it up this afternoon at 1, and they're expected to pass it. There's been some rumblings that some folks have made some rumblings about holding it up, but I don't think anyone thinks that that's seriously going to happen. And then the somewhat kind of interesting thing on the horizon is that come December 11th, after the elections, where we may have a Republican majority in the Senate, we may have the same Senate makeup, but that lame duck Congress is going to have to take some action, whether that be another continuing resolution to get us into the new Congress, or that's probably the most likely outcome if there's a change. If there isn't a change in the Senate, then maybe they do get a full budget pass without having to do another CR. That's all I've got for a federal funding update.
Okay, so let's move on to Framework. So there's been a lot of talk in our industry about making housing counseling more accessible online, and so one of the innovations has been this effort that the Housing Partnership Network and the Minnesota Homeownership Center have done to put together an online education and counseling program. So we have Rennie Elliott, who's going to give us a quick rundown, and we are going to also have an opportunity to have a more in-depth webinar on this, but let's get a sense of what it's all about, and then we'll let you know about the schedule for the webinar. So Rennie, glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. So I'm Rennie Elliott. I work for the Housing Partnership Network, one of the 2 founding organizations of Framework. And as you said, Framework is an online homebuyer education course. It exceeds the national industry standards and HUD standards for homebuyer education and curriculum. Sorry, excuse me. I'm just a little nervous. So what we did is we took Minnesota Homeownership Center's Homestretch curriculum, which is used by most housing counseling organizations in Minnesota, and we spent a couple of years nationalizing that curriculum and working with experts in both adult education and online learning to really come up with a lot of best practices in order to create this tool. So we're really excited to show it to you guys on October 1st. We'll send out a webinar registration link and a couple of brochures about the course. So we hope you'll join us. I don't think I mentioned it'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Good. And so, Rennie, how would if counseling agencies chose to use this, how would they use it? Could you have some?
Oh, great. Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a lot of housing counseling partners, and for HUD-approved housing counseling organizations, to become a partner of Framework is really easy. It's simple. There's no setup fee. We give you all of the marketing material that you need. It's a pretty short agreement. And as I mentioned, for those HUD-approved counseling organizations, there is a fee-sharing part of the agreement. Partners earn 20% of all course purchases that go through their website, which currently the course is priced at $75. So our partners receive $15 for each purchase through their website.
And so somebody comes to their program, they refer them through their website to Framework, and then what happens?
Well, then that user takes the course, and the counseling partner has access to all of that learner information so that they can report that data on whatever they're reporting to, whether it's the HUD on the 9902. They'll also receive contact information for that learner if they want to reach out for further one-on-one counseling. All of our counseling partners are also placed into a database on our website. If somebody needs help during the course, they can use that database to look up their closest housing counseling organization. We also provide a 1-800 number where people can ask questions about the course or if they have technology questions or whatever. So we try to provide a variety of ways to get the learner the resources that they need during this really exciting process.
And it's pretty much a self-motivated structure. Do people, are ratios calculated? Is a credit report pulled? Or how does it work?
So there are a lot of interactive activities during the course, and we give resources for them to obtain their credit report. But I think if they were working one-on-one with a housing counseling organization, in addition to taking Framework, there would probably be a lot more one-on-one. You know, maybe the counseling agency would pull the credit report for them. And the course it's 9 modules. It takes learners from, you know, budgeting and saving for a house all the way through, once you're in the house, how to be a good neighbor, you know, what does your mortgage statement look like. And the feedback we're getting from users, we've had 5,000 users so far, and I'm actually currently sorting through our exit survey responses, is people really like it and get a lot of information from it and are pretty grateful for the class. I think the only complaint is the length, and it takes users an average of 4 to 6 hours to complete this course, which, you know, is a little bit less than an 8-hour in-person course. So we take that complaint of length with a little bit of a grain of salt.
There was one question if this is frameworkhomeownership.org.
Yep, that's us.
Great. So what Rennie is offering us is we'll have a webinar in a couple weeks on October 1st. It's a Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and it'll be an hour-long walkthrough on Framework, how it works, how your agency might link up to it, so that people have more information and agencies can figure out if it's something they'd like to use or not.
And just one other question is whether agencies can report these numbers to HUD, I guess, of clients that go through Framework.
Yep. So all of our partners have access to the back end of the course where they can retrieve all of the demographic information that they need to report to HUD on the 9902. And anyone that comes through your agency is your client. We're not reporting on those people, so they're yours.
Good. Important issue. Well, Rennie, thanks so much, and we'll look forward to the webinar on 1st of October.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
Good, and we'll circulate the link and information on how to sign up for the webinar.
Great. Yeah, I'll get that out to you guys in just a couple of minutes.
Good. Cool. Okay. Well, good. So let's move on, and our next topic is really the meetings we did in Washington, D.C., and they were quite a marathon set of meetings. And but I think these were important and valuable. And one of the softer reasons for doing these is you want to be in front of decision makers, reminding them about the value and importance of the meetings, of our work, and how to make sure that we're on people's lists of things they're thinking about when they're making policy decisions. And that actually came through in a lot of these meetings. We had over 40 individuals representing different organizations, broad spectrum of the industry. It was really a pleasure to see people, a number of whom I had never met before. I only talked to on the phone, so it was a lot of fun that way as well. Though obviously a lot of old friends were there as well. So a really powerful time, and we've got a number of the people who were instrumental in the meetings are going to join us on the call. And I'm not sure if everybody could get through, but I know we've got Ellie Pepper on the line and Stephanie Galvin-Riley. Afreen, are you able to join us?
No, and Stephanie, can you try to talk, please? So Stephanie, it says you're self-muted, so maybe just hang up and call back in. I think that'll be the easiest thing right now. Oh, there you go. Oh.
Okay,
Are you there?
how about now?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I didn't realize I clicked that. Sorry.
And Sharon Lagenza. Sharon, are you on?
How do I talk? Okay.
Hello?
Here I am.
Sharon, you should hang up. You should call in on the telephone.
Yeah, it's going through the computer. You don't get a very good voice sound.
That's what I'll do.
Thank you. Great. Okay, so Ellie and Stephanie, let's get started. So let's see. So why don't you give us your impressions of, so we had a marathon 5 hours with Sarah Jarik and her staff, major commitment by HUD to do this. Why don't you tell me what you think some of the highlights were?
So a lot of the takeaways that I think most of you, or hopefully most of you, saw the agenda that was sent out prior to our meeting because we had asked for feedback on it. And this is Stephanie, by the way, sorry. I was impressed by the fact that the Office of Housing Counseling is working with a lot less people. So they can relate to the fact that we do more work with less people. They have, 68 people located in 28 locations, and there are, there points, each one of them, regardless of their job, right up to Sarah Jarik, is a point of contact for HUD agencies. And they took the time out of their day. They had very high-level people there, as well as other staffers that they had come down and listen in, and they had people on the phone also from around the country that couldn't be present that day. So they took a lot of time and resources to give to us for that day. So I was quite happy with that. The one thing I guess I was a little disappointed in, and I don't think this was something that was in their control, is their hands were tied a little bit because their what they can do is dictated, or I should say is limited by, what word am I looking for? Their rules and regulations. So a lot of things that if they wanted to share with us, they couldn't because it has to be put out in a letter to all agencies in in the interest of fairness. So there were some things that we weren't able to get information on, or that because of the limitations of their guidelines that they have to run by as a government agency, the answer was just a no. But
I will add that there was, as we listened closely, we figured out some things just by how they framed statements that we've learned. So just as a couple examples, so there's been a lot of questions about will there be a NOFA this year, because it was a 2-year NOFA process. And so they talked about a supplemental NOFA, which tells us, well, they will definitely have a NOFA this year. The questions were raised about should there be a what happens if agencies would switch from one intermediary to another, or if an intermediary stopped being an intermediary, or if there was a new intermediary that wanted to come in. And or if an agency didn't apply early but last year but wants to apply this year. And while there were no formal statements about what was happening, it sounds like it'll be included in the supplemental NOFA that they are trying to figure out how to allow agencies to change intermediaries. They are open to the question of an agency that's been newly formed that couldn't apply to the first-year NOFA to being able to apply this time around. But there was also a feeling like if they had a chance, if the agency didn't apply last year and wants to apply this year and was in existence last year, that they really kind of had their chance, and so maybe they're not so sympathetic about giving them an opportunity. But for the others, they were trying to figure out flexibility. The big question is, will, in the scoring of the NOFA, if you change from one intermediary to another, or if you are joining an intermediary for the first time, will that affect the score? Will the score get bigger if you're adding more sub-grantees? And to that question, they said they were really struggling with that question and haven't got an answer for it, and asked for our opinion. So we're beginning to understand a little bit more about some of these things. I think the other thing they talked about was housing counseling certification, and it's been hinted to us in the past that it'll be done in the FY 2015, and they were talking about it being in the year 2015. So I'm assuming that this means that it'll start in early October, but we don't know that for sure. But there will be a free study guide online available to everybody for the test, so it's not mandatory that you have to go to training. You can use their study materials. And that there was a new HECM review that's going on, which I had not heard about, maybe others have, and we didn't learn a lot about what would be in it, but that it was one of the things. So we did learn some things. Long way of saying that.
Yeah, this is Ellie. There was, I think one of the big things that I took away from the meeting with them was we had a lot of in-depth conversation about the points of contact, and what was good about.
Oh.
Still with us, Ellie?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. So about points of contact.
Can we just see if Sharon...
We had a lot of great conversation about what was working with the points of contact and what wasn't working with the points of contact. And I think the big thing that Sarah seemed to try to put out there was that she needed to hear if there were issues about the points of contact. And we kind of pushed back and said it can be hard for an organization to say something directly to the point of contact. They suggested then asking for a supervisor, and we suggested back that that may be difficult for an organization to say to their point of contact, I want to talk to your supervisor. So in the end, what the suggestion was, it was that an organization having maybe some kind of issue with their point of contact should email housing.counseling@hud.gov to say what their issue is, and that way it would bring up the issue with their point of contact without it being specifically put to the point of contact directly. The other thing that Sarah mentioned that kind of put a light bulb for me was that she understands that there is a lot of inconsistency right now, but they are dealing with a lot of new rules. And so they're having that issue of trying to get everybody on the same page and everybody understanding all of these new rules that are coming down, just as much as we are all trying to understand all the new rules and aren't perfect at it. And she also, as Stephanie mentioned earlier, that every single person in that organization is a point of contact right up to Sarah, and that they all have 30 or 40 organizations that they're responsible for, so as well as being responsible for something else. So I think with that, I came away with having a better understanding of the workload that they're trying to deal with, and they are trying to manage expectations while at the same time meet all of the needs of the housing counseling organizations. So again, she really does want to hear when there's an issue that is a point of contention for her. She wants housing counseling agencies to feel comfortable with their point of contact.
And one interesting thing, I think the way they thought of handling a disagreement with a point of contact was to ask for that point of contact to speak with a supervisor, and as Ellie said, some people would be uncomfortable doing that. But we also did ask if we could get what the supervisory structure is so that you could approach them directly. But the most formal thing is what Ellie said, which is the housing.counselor.hud.gov as the mechanism for writing in. But we'll try to get the hierarchy as well as another way of handling that. And a couple of you have emailed me recently, and we've tested that system a little bit, and and we did get a very quick turnaround, so that was pretty good.
And
so,
I will add, Bruce, not to cut you off, but it's
No,
Stephanie, that she also asked me afterwards, she said, so on the flip side, which I thought was interesting because we were there, totally self-serving my interests, and she asked me, well, what do we do if a housing counseling agency is not responding to us? They're not returning our calls, we need information from them, or responding to the point of contact. So I just thought it was interesting that their problems mirror our problems oftentimes.
right. So
And
Sharon
I
on the
don't
line?
remember what the answer was to that was.
So actually, I have a little more I can say on it, but Sharon, have you connected with us? Not yet. Okay.
Sharon, I think the issue, sorry to interrupt, but I think the issue is you need to put in the audio pin, which you get by opening up the audio screen on the webinar kind of control panel there, and it should give you the dial-in number, the access code, and an audio pin that will allow us to hear you. One interesting thing that, so Sarah's out is literally the point of contact for this, the focus of this meeting for 5 hours, so pretty amazing. And it was a kind of a tour de force performance. And part of what she talked about was they're really trying to rethink how HUD does business in the Office of Housing Counseling into a much more teamwork structure, a non-punitive structure, so that it's more where things aren't working well, figure out how to improve the training rather than saying you did wrong and you'll be penalized. And I think a lot of us have seen a real increase in morale and ownership among a number of the staff in the Office of HUD Housing Counseling. And an interesting thing happened when Carol Galante came in, who's her boss, and the FHA commissioner. She came in with a gentleman whose name is Vin, I think, and
Biniam, yeah, Biniam.
Biniam, okay, so he will be taking her place. But one of the things he commented on was that what's happening in the Office of Housing Counseling with that kind of staff structure and encouragement is going to be used as a model to replicate throughout HUD. So pretty interesting, and good that some positive things come out of it.
We should have Sharon now. Hopefully, Sharon, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yay! And it sounds like you too. That's good.
Great, thank you, and thank you for the instructions, which I desperately need with technology. One of the things, Bruce, I wanted to follow up that I thought was interesting was the person's background, and he comes from, if I heard right, he comes from McKinsey Consulting. So I think he's there to maybe shake things up. I think he was described as a disruptor, which I thought was kind of interesting in terms of how HUD is looking at maybe reforming other programs along the model of the Office of Housing Counseling.
I mean, it's really valuable that at the end of the day, housing counseling is a very small part of the HUD budget. So for it to be a source of innovation and model means that it gets an extra level of attention. That's really helpful. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about this also a little bit when we talk about the Secretary's meeting. But are there more highlights people want to hit? Because we did cover a lot of ground in the meeting with HUD.
This is Ellie. There was a couple of times that this happened, and I'm going to point one out, but it's not the only time that it happened. But there was discussion about how it was an 18-month period for the grant, and that was because it was running so late. But a lot of the groups commented to the staff of HUD that that was kind of confusing, and it was difficult for the transitioning and double reporting of overlapping years, and are they going to change that process, and that this is a difficulty. And what came back from the HUD staff was that we did that because we thought it was going to solve problems and make your life easier. But if what you're telling us is that it's making your life harder, then we need to figure out a different way. So it was interesting in that on a few occasions that happened where something was brought up by the housing counselors as this change is not good, and their response was that was a change we tried to do to make things easier for you. So I think they're interested in this continuing conversation.
Absolutely. But let me add one thing that they did provide us clarity there. So if you have contracts, you'll have the 2014 and the 2015 contract. You do not need, you can do, some agencies will just stop at 12 months, end the 14 contract, and then start up the 15 contract. But you can, the intermediaries at least will be able to continue with the year 14 contract, 18 months, and still start the 15-year contract on month 1 of the contract period for 2015. So you don't have to finish out 14 in order to start 15. So that what the problem was that people were worried about was some agencies had moved all their business into the 12-month contract year and would be finished, but other agencies working with the intermediary might need the full 18 months. And so they're accommodating that issue. The other question that happens is, well, how do you apply the your 9902 activities? And so you'll have to split your 9902 activities to divide them between the contracts and identify them that way. Stephanie, you were going to say something.
No, that was it, actually. I was just going to clarify the answer we got. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about, too, was we had quite a conversation on billing as far as reporting goes, the management of reporting, billing, and how our CMSs work and HCS works and all that good stuff. So some of the highlights, just to summarize it, was we told them we understand that HUD has goals to meet and the OMB requirements that they have to meet. So we understand that reporting isn't going to go away, but the detail at which we're expected to report requires a large amount of time and labor. It's not cost effective relative to the grants we're getting. And I'm from a small agency in upstate New York, and I ran some numbers that I had personally before I went, and I think she was interested in numbers as far as, for example, I said in fiscal year 12-13, I billed 522 hours to HUD, and 115 of those were program oversight, quality control, and reporting. And that ended up being 22% of, I can't read my notes, either the grant amount or the hours. And I expected that to double. That was actually on the low side for a lot of people. And I think I noticed she wrote that down. So if any of you guys have the time to just do some quick numbers, I'd be willing to take those and get back to Sarah, like how much time you're spending and how much of a percentage of your total hours billed and how much money that equates to from your total HUD award is used to do the billing portion, management, and actual numbers. Because I think they're looking for something like that, because they're going to look at providing us a clear explanation of how time can and cannot be billed, come out with maybe more clear details. They're trying to be flexible. I think their idea was they didn't want to give us a lot of forms and samples that we have to use, that we're required to use. But I think in being flexible, we're all wondering, what exactly do you want from us? Because we're hearing different things from different people. So we suggested to them that perhaps to start with, giving us a few examples of forms would be helpful so that we're doing it in the proper way that they want. Sarah said that there are many agencies that do not have a problem with reporting or billing or any type of time, hours, reporting the hours worked and the management of that, which I disagree. I mean, I'd like to also get a poll from people on the call if you wanted to email me directly, which it's sgalvin@acrha.org. If you have issues with the billing, because what I'd like to do is follow up, with a HUD task force call, follow up with the next steps or some more information to get back to them. So if you could let me know, that would be helpful, and what the specific issues you have are. I'm a small agency, so I don't have a billing department. I don't have a finance department, a human resources, or anything. That's all me. So, related to that, we had asked about a CMS, better CMS systems to incorporate billing features into the software, which she said that the current CMS systems do have that, which I didn't get into details with her, but they don't really work the way we want them to. So she said that they'll support us, but that's something that we really need to work with on our own. They can't really advocate on our behalf for a whole separate CMS provider. Go ahead, Bruce, sorry.
Well, yeah, so I think that those are all good points. If there are agencies that feel like the PARs are highly manageable, it's really working well, we would love to know about that, and I would love if you can share what your experience is.
Yes.
One of the things that Sarah's been encouraging us to do, us as in the National Housing Resource Center, is to pull together kind of best practice forms that people use. And the idea is intake forms, disclosures, reporting forms, whatever is the basic of our business, and just we'll put them out on some kind of a part of our website with some sort of indexing, so that when you're looking at forms, you can see what other groups are using that might work well. And so she's encouraging us to do that. That might be a project we might do this fall. We have to figure out how to do it, but let me know if there's interest in that, because that could be, and especially interest in people contributing their forms, so that other groups can learn from them. So Sharon, Ellie, did we have any more comments on the HUD marathon meeting?
No, other than, as we started out with, I do think that there's a real opportunity here for continued conversation, and that openness that I at least took away to hearing feedback from the field and helping them think through some of these hard issues. I think it's a real opportunity for us to shape at least to try to influence and shape some of the things that might be coming down the pike.
So the HUD task force will reconvene, and we'll do some more work on kind of analyzing where we want to go with all this. And I know there'll be an ongoing conversation with Sarah and her team as well. But we should feel very comfortable, for example, if there are problems with a point of contact, to use the email address, and we'll try to figure out if we can get the names for people to escalate to, or advance to. Maybe escalate is too strong a word here.
And I'll just let you know that I think Afreen should be on now.
I am.
Oh, good. Oh, great. So,
I'm on the. Oh, sorry. Please forgive me for. I have to get out in a bit from the cab. That is. So please forgive me for the interruption.
Oh no, we're glad to have you. And do you have any summary remarks you'd like to make from the experience with meeting with HUD?
Well, I kind of missed the beginning of the conversation, and again, apologies, but I did just meet with Sarah because she's also doing a presentation with the HUD Intermediaries Group meeting that I was at, and she is looking forward to hearing from us in terms of a wrap-up of the meeting and also to get directions from us in terms of priorities, and I said she should be expecting that soon enough. And then also, for her it would be easier if, we also worked with the HUD Intermediaries Group on the HUD issues as well. It would make her life easier, she will find. I'm going to put you on mute because I have to pay the cab. I'm really sorry. It'll take a few seconds.
Okay. So it does sound like we'll work with the Coalition of HUD Intermediaries as well on this. They have issues in common, and there's huge overlap in the participation, so that will be an easy thing to include in what we're doing. And we're very open to it.
So, India, if anybody has any specific questions on anything we didn't cover, please feel free. I can help answer any questions, too. I know Bruce and Matthew definitely can handle it without a problem, but I'm willing to pitch in, too.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about the meeting with the Secretary? So who's got impressions from that?
I'm sorry, can I just say one last thing before we move on from this?
Yes. Yes.
This is Afreen again. We just need to, I'm probably going to do this over email just so we are all on the same page. What I would like to do is list our priorities as I know them by talking to you all informally, and also at the end of the meeting what I heard. I'm going to put it on email what I know that our priorities are to be, and if you guys can weigh in via email, I know some of you are really awesome about responding. That way we can move the conversation with Sarah forward, and I will be able to send the email out and copy you all to Sarah, in between my crazy travels the next 3 weeks.
Good. So, and so that was one of the requests, that the sense was that HUD is interested in doing everything but doesn't have the resources to do everything. What should we put higher on the list as things that they should be focusing on? And also some concern about how much change the agencies should have to manage. Good. Well, and hats off to Afreen, especially for heading up the HUD task force. That was really good, and she chaired that portion of the meeting and very skillfully in a complicated setting. So that all went really, really well, and we'll look forward to doing more. So, HUD Secretary. This was a pretty important meeting. It turns out that he had done very few meetings before that. It was his first meeting of the Housing Counseling Community, one of the earliest meetings in his administration. And we were a little worried that he'd just come in, shake hands, and move on to the next thing. And he actually came in, sat down, and was pretty generous with his time and attention. And so what's our impressions here?
This is Ellie. I mean, I think right off he made it pretty clear that he doesn't have any intention of starting any big new initiatives, that he wants to focus on what is currently underway and really complete some projects that have already been started. So that was kind of right off the framework for his administration.
Fortunately, we were making some proposals that didn't require a lot of lead time. So, I mean, he was actually interested in and responsive around some of the proposals.
Hi, this is Sharon.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think the impression I got, one is obviously he has, he thinks very highly of home ownership in particular, and he said that he wants to ensure that HUD is an agency of opportunity and ensure that folks can reach the American dream of home ownership. And then he tells his personal story of growing up in rental housing and his mother finally being able to purchase a home. And so I think that two things came to me. One is just kind of, I think he feels very strongly this idea of home ownership and quality, affordable housing because of his personal experiences. But then two, that he recognizes he has limited time. And so, you know, what is he going to be able to do in terms of changing HUD's direction? And I don't think he is, backing up what Ellie said, that he's really looking at continuing some of the initiatives that were already started, opening up access to credit, doing things like that, but not really, you know, trying to move the boat too far afield. So those are kind of my impressions.
One thing, so one of the proposals we made to him was about doing a public campaign on increasing the visibility of housing counseling and trying to get people to go to a counselor before they made major financial decisions. And so, you know, incorporating it into his speeches when he traveled to visit housing counseling agencies or to go to home closings, to do things that raise the visibility of our work. And he indicated interest in that. Oh, there he is on the screen right now. You can see him with the leaders in Housing Counseling Group, most of them. And I think so this was one that, you know, went into, it's a possibility, we'll need to think about it more, rather than slam dunk, but one that we ought to keep pushing and see if we can create some kind of a campaign with it. The second big thing was we talked about HUD housing counseling and NFMC funding and the problems we're having, and really squaring up with what the President's budget will be next year, and trying to make sure that anything that gets cut out of NFMC goes to HUD housing counseling. And when we talk about the other meetings, we'll tell you about some of the problems there, but seem to be receptive on that. But the one that actually got the most attention was the technology proposal. And this is this idea that he convene some kind of a task force or summit where we bring in technology providers, you know, the Googles of the world, and then stakeholders, both on the counseling side and then financial services companies, and we bring in regulators and government agencies as well, with the idea that with the goal of trying to create a fund of private money, so not government money, private money that would be used to invest in seriously upgrading the technology capacity of housing counseling groups all around the country. And this is an area of a lot of interest on his part. And the one thing that I know we've seen some action on is there was a request that came out of his office quickly about some kind of proposal. So we have an outline we've put in, and that conversation is going to start. It's not a guarantee this is all going to happen, but this is one that we definitely gotten some traction on. So we'll keep pushing on that as well. So what did you all think about him just in terms of a human being, a communicator, a person to relate to?
Well, he was just very personable, and I really enjoyed hearing his personal story. He's a twin. He talked about their upcoming 40th birthday this year, and that he's the older, better-looking one. So, you know, he's just very personable and enjoyable to listen to.
Yeah, I think it was a very encouraging meeting, and it was pretty low key. That was another interesting thing. You know, often these people, you know, expect to dominate the room, that sort of thing, and he was quite open and encouraging, but you know, modest in his own way as well. So very positive, kind of had a very good feel to the meeting. And you know, we met with him for a solid hour. We had the impression that he would come in and be rushed out really quickly. In fact, he hung around for the photograph you're looking at right now, and some other pictures. Chatted with people. So we probably stayed there until 5:20, 5:30, and really, you know, it was actually a very encouraging meeting as these go. So should we move on and maybe touch on some of the other meetings we had? So we had a very interesting meeting with Seth Wheeler and Karen Chang from the White House, and they're part of the National Economic Council, and they're the ones responsible for housing, and especially Seth. And his actual role is that he's the person that represents the administration with the various departments like Treasury and the CFPB and FHFA, and so can communicate the administration's position with them on a day-to-day basis. So very important relationship. We've talked to him fairly regularly, but and you're always worried that you only have 5 minutes because there's a crisis with him. In fact, he came in and spent an hour with us and then spent time out in the hallway as well. So who wants to kind of note what some of the highlights of that? Well, okay, I will.
Yeah. Well, so Bruce,
Okay.
This is Stephanie. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of substance, but basically he seemed to get it. I mean, he gets it. It's not anything that we had to. He was asking us for input, which was hopeful to me on some changes to the HAMP program. We were explaining to him what we were seeing in the field. They were taking a lot of notes, and he asked a lot of insightful questions that led me to believe, you know, he understands what we're talking about. But he's more of a policy thinker, so he was thinking along the lines of what can we do to help, like we're seeing redefaults with the HAMP interest rate increases that are occurring. And, you know, one of his questions was, and of course they're trying to look for, and he understands there's not a one-size-fits-all, and with a program of big scope like that, that's what we're going to get. But his question was, you know, would it be better to give a permanent loan mod with a moderate interest rate reduction, or a deep cut, you know, a deep loan mod for a temporary amount of time? And a lot of us are seeing a lot of unemployment issues and long-term issues. So there was some question. It was a tough question for us to answer. Bruce, can you expand on that at all, or?
Well, yeah, so they were particularly focused. I mean, so it's interesting to hear what they talk about in their staff meetings. So this focus was on unemployed people and how to help them in their housing situations. And so as Stephanie described it, it's kind of like either a deep subsidy that's very expensive, that's short-term, or a much more modest subsidy that's life of loan, but fewer people will be helped because they don't have enough money. And I mean, I don't think there was a good answer to that question. The problem in some ways is that it's not this kind of either or. I'm a big fan of deep subsidies. I think we do have to get people out of the crisis, but you sort of want to think about, well, who gets it and when, and you want to provide it for people that are likely to recover and have opportunity. And so it's, I mean, it got pretty much in the weeds very quickly, which is exactly what you like. You know, so I think on that particular one, no clear resolution, no great exit, but important to know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and we talked to him also about the settlements for Citi and Bank of America and possibly hooking, hooking NHRC up, right, with the Department of Justice,
Right.
which he said basically he didn't say no, but you know, that's not their thing. Is that kind of?
Well, so the problem is you don't want the court system to be politicized. So the administration going in and telling DOJ what to do hints of that. So they were less inclined to do that. And I should say that we did have this conversation also with the secretary at HUD, with Julian Castro. HUD has been our kind of go-to to influence the settlements and some of the attorneys general. With HUD, it was going through one of their lawyers who does the negotiations, and so Castro said, well, we can work on hooking you up with those people. With Seth Wheeler, so in the White House, that becomes more politicized. His analysis was, let's see if we can set something up with Mike Stegman at Treasury. So Stegman is the kind of the policy guy in the Treasury Department, who then might communicate that stuff to DOJ. So, you know, again, we try to play this card in different venues, but some of it also hopefully filters through when we put together a list of things we'd like to see in the settlements. You know, we'll always keep Seth in that loop, and you know how that information flows from where he goes, I don't know, but we do know that sometimes the stuff shows up in many locations. You know, really useful conversations. We also hit on the SEC rule, which is that SEC, we talked about this on the last call, the SEC has put out disclosures on how to, on disclosures in loan portfolios of what the makeup of the loans are, things like DTI, FICO score, LTV, that kind of information. In general, as Matthew, I think, reported last time, a lot of these are things that make the investor think, oh, that's a little bit riskier loan, and if we could also get them to disclose if the loan has been counseled, then it kind of acts as a compensating factor and adds value to the conversation and the value of the portfolio. So Seth I like this idea, it's something I want to follow up through, and he was pretty adamant about it. So that was very good. So we're going to, we will follow up with him on this. And this is, as Matthew's pointed out, it's going to be a long-term campaign, but that was a win. And the third big area that we ended up talking about actually out in the hallway was around language access. And our frustration that we've been bringing this up for a year and a half and have seen very little progress, and gave him our list of things, which we then also brought up with other meetings as well. So why don't we talk a little bit about the meetings we did on the Hill with the Senate Finance Committee and with Tom Reed's office in the House, and with Megan McCarthy from the Senate Appropriations Committee, who's the person who deals with housing counseling funding. So who wants to tackle any of those, especially the Megan McCarthy one?
Well, I'll tackle the meeting with Tom Reed's office.
Okay.
We met with his staff person, Phillips Hinch, and Tom Reed is a Republican representative to the House from New York State, from the southern tier region of the state. His staffer, Phillips Hinch, has been very communicative with New York State housing groups regarding the Mortgage Debt Relief Act. Tom Reed is the House sponsor and has gotten several co-sponsors to that bill. At any rate, in our conversation with him, we talked a little bit about ways that we might be able to help to move the bill forward, and he followed up with an email to Stephanie and I saying that although they had heard many stories from homeowners, he thought that it might be good if nationally there was an effort for people to do op-ed pieces in the newspaper regarding homeowner experience with the inability to get principal reduction or to get a good, or to be concerned about doing a deed in lieu or a short sale given the potential for the tax liability. So that was that conversation with him, and we also ended up having a conversation with him related to something we discovered. The House had put forward a rule prohibiting HUD from instituting the proposed HAWK rule. So we talked with him a little bit about that and just expressed our concern about that we were very supportive of HAWK and wanted to make sure that that moved forward. So that was the meeting with him.
And that was good, partly because he's a Republican and was pretty sympathetic on our issues. Also asked him about including in the budget, HUD puts out a proposal every year when they give the President's budget. There's always a paragraph or two about legislation that they'd like to see included in it that tends to be more administrative. And in this last couple of years, they've put in requests to deal with funding that could be given to HUD that's not government funding. So it could be money from settlements, it could be foundation money. Frankly, this is something that we have triggered. And the idea would be that HUD might be able to distribute funds through its own mechanisms that would be easier to get out to many agencies than trying to invent some new process to do that, and then trying to get groups vetted to do it. So that it comes with its own framework, so this would be quite helpful. And so he wasn't aware of the stuff, and we'll try to find out why it wasn't included, and so hopefully we'll hear back on that, or maybe we need to nudge that one. But it was a very helpful meeting and very good. That was the people in New York actually lined that one up on their own. That was good.
So I can just report quickly on some of the other Hill meetings.
Yeah.
So we met with a staff person from the Senate Finance Committee, from the majority staff, so a Democrat, he works on the individual income, federal income tax issues. So he's specifically the person working on trying to get tax relief for people who have mortgage forgiveness. So I mean, it's really more of the same. He seems, extremely confident that they're going to get it done, that they're very likely going to get it done this year, make it retroactive to January 1st of this year, and through December 31st of next year. So it would be a 2-year period going back to the beginning of the year. Without going into too much, the holdup right now is it's part of this bigger package of tax extensions. The Republicans are trying to tie in the tax on medical devices that was part of Obamacare and a big source of funding for Obamacare. That's what's holding it up, but everyone that we talk to is very confident that it gets done. The one thing the gentleman from Senate Finance said was that possibly if the Republicans won the Senate, he could see them kind of waiting until the new Congress, so that would be early next year, just to kind of take the credit for getting it through. But he even that he didn't think was likely. So again, this has been an incredibly frustrating for everyone and for homeowners, obviously most. But they do
and one thing. And one thing I didn't know was that the bill would cover the tax extension for 2 years, so this past year and the year ahead. So that would be so if in fact that's correct, which these people knew what they were talking about, it should be a little helpful.
And I think that the Senate bill is for 2 years. The House bill is for 1 year, so they would have to sort that out.
Okay.
We are running out of time, so I'll just very quickly say that we met with Megan McCarthy and also someone from the minority staff of the Senate Appropriations Committee. So we had both the Dems and Republicans in the room. I think it was really good. We had, I think, close to 20 people there and spent a good while just kind of people talking about what they're seeing in the field, and I think it's really good for them to hear that. And the more exposure they have to housing counseling, the better. But we've kind of reported on this ad nauseum. But the very tricky thing for us is trying to persuade appropriators that as NFMC funding decreases, that HUD housing counseling assistance funding should increase. To the way that they see it, NFMC was a temporary program, was always meant to be zeroed out eventually, so it was not meant to be, those dollars were never intended to be migrated. So we're still just, it's a tough argument, but we're still working on making it, and I think that's all. Bruce, I don't know if you want to add anything else on the appropriate meeting.
Well, I mean, so this is the kind of important issue here, is that while we have tremendous credibility with these people, there's a principled position about HUD housing counseling funding that it's separate from NFMC funding, and we've been saying they should be thought of as one pot, and if you're going to cut on one side, you need to add to the other side, and adding to HUD housing counseling makes it more permanent. So Seth Wheeler, very sympathetic to this. Bunch of House Senate people very sympathetic. But the appropriators, so Megan McCarthy particularly, not sympathetic at all, and saying, we actually increased your HUD housing counseling funding in this year's budget. You should be grateful. And, in the President's budget was $60 million. Last year we were at $45 million, but we're up to $49 in the Senate proposed budget. So they're looking at that as an increase, as opposed to, of course, we're seeing it as a decrease because we're losing the money on NFMC. So how do you influence this? How do you change that? Well, the only place is if you have a great relationship with Barbara Mikulski and or Patty Murray. If it's
Susan Collins, I'll add to that.
Susan Collins, that's actually a very, very good point. So those are the three people that probably could influence increasing that line item. So anyways, we're really out of time. So I'm going to very quickly just say CFPB meeting. We had a very intense conversation about language access that maybe we'll address this in the next call. We'll spend some time on this because they put some challenging questions up to us that we need to think through, and we'll probably have to have a bigger discussion about this, and we'll need your help on some of these things. So quickly, just to wrap up, many thanks to Ellie, Stephanie, Sharon, and Afreen, and to the many people that helped make this meeting happen. So our next big event will be, a really big event will be December 11th. We invited the Secretary Castro to it at the meeting. He wrote it down. We'll see if he actually makes it, but there'll be a large commitment, and there'll be some deep thinking about our work, and these meetings are really designed to move our work forward. The meeting's in DC. The morning meeting will be for NHRC members and lunch, and then the afternoon will be for everybody. And we're also talking about maybe getting some kind of a dinner reception sort of thing happening in the evening. So the nice thing about the 11th is it'll be in the NeighborWorks NTI training week, and it'll also be in their location. NeighborWorks is actually providing the room and microphones. We'll have seats for 100 people, so there is a chance we might be full up this year, and we have and it'll be the day before the NFMC grantee meeting, so some of you are flying in for that, and they may be able to, so your transportation can get paid for that way, and for some of you, maybe hotel as well. So, but plenty of people come irregardless of all that, because these are important meetings. We really value that. Also want to say big thanks to the many groups that have joined, and we should post that in our next meeting. We had a surge of membership in August, and really it means a lot to us. This is how we keep our work going, and thanks to the groups that have renewed their membership. We have a very high renewal rate. That's very good. So just want to say thanks to all of you for that. We're on a regular schedule, and so we'll have the webinar, which will get notice out to on Framework, and we'll have some more webinars coming up after that, and we'll have a regular call the first Tuesday in October. Thanks for all your good work out there. You really have helped us all figure this all out, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks. Bye.